And we're just coming up to the 10:30 hour, and I'd love to start without any further delay. Mention that the friends and staff of the Cos Cob Library would love to welcome, and it's my honor on behalf of the friends and staff of the Cos Cob Library and the Greenwich Library to introduce noted genealogist and to welcome her, Teresa Vega. Her program today will focus on the life and times of Professor Norwood R Shields in the Little Bethel AME Church in Greenwich, Connecticut. In 1898, the Greenwich High School's first graduating class consisted of 5 young men and 7 young ladies. Norwood R Shields, a member of that class, was also the first African-American graduate of Greenwich High School. His father, Reverend William H Shields, was a graduate of Lincoln University, which is a historically Black university. In 1894, Reverend Shields became the pastor of Little Bethel AME Church in central Greenwich. His father died in 1898. Norwood R. Shields, a 1904 graduate of Cornell University, was a professor and a department director at Wilberforce University, Ohio, for over 33 years. He then went on to a position at the University of Delaware, and he passed away in 1955. Miss Teresa Vega has been researching her family history and genealogy for many years, using a combination of traditional as well as genetic genealogy. She has been able to trace several of her maternal mixed-race lines back to colonial New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Virginia. But her goal is to document her family history the way it was experienced by her ancestors. Her research specialties include both African-American and Puerto Rican genealogy in general, slavery and free Blacks in the Northeast, the Afro-Dutch cultural legacy in New York and New Jersey, the New York to Madagascar slave trade in the late 16 to early 1700s, the historical importance of African-American burial grounds, as well as genetic genealogy for beginners. Today's program marks the beginning of the Friends of the Cos Cob Library's 19th year sponsorship of the next in a series genealogy programs. Your annual membership in the Friends of the Cos Cob Library makes these programs and many others possible. There is a large collection of genealogy books available at the library. The Greenwich Library System provides digital access to Ancestry Library Edition, as well as many digital genealogy resources at the library or at home using your library card. In 2019, the Greenwich Library became a Family Search affiliate library. Now, patrons of Greenwich Library using their local branches' computers can access the free Family Search's digital genealogical collections that are otherwise only available through a Family Search Family History Center. Here is Teresa with our program, The Life and Times of Professor Norwood R. Shields in the Little Bethel AME Church. Please join me in giving Miss Vega a warm welcome. Teresa, I'm going to mute myself, go in the background, and turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thanks, Rick. Big thank you, of course, to Rick, also to Mary Cameron and Laura Matthews. I'm so happy to be here. Anybody who's attended one of my talks knows I tend to be less formal than other people. I decided in putting together this presentation to contextualize Professor Norwood Shields. He has lived a well-documented life. If you go to Ancestry and type in Norwood R Shields, you'll get a wealth of information. If you go to newspapers.com or Genealogy Bank, there's tons of articles on him. So I'm not going to concentrate too much on the actual records until later, but I wanted to discuss the context of his life and how he came to Greenwich and why. And in order to do that, the time period that we're looking at is the Reconstruction era, right after the Emancipation Proclamation. I will be handing out a PDF of this talk as well as a reading list that has a lot more information to everybody. So here is Professor Norwood R. Shields. If you were going to do a Jeopardy question, that R stands for Rarison. So this is a picture that comes from a yearbook at Cornell University. And as you can see, he was born in Burlington, New Jersey, and I love the description of how he came to Cornell. Driven from his home by the proverbial mosquito, Rarison trekked to Greenwich, Connecticut. Here he prepared at the local high school, Greenwich High, imbibing the accumulating genius of the nutmeg state. And that's a nickname, another Jeopardy question. Not satisfied with the quality of New England fruits, he came here to study agriculture. Incidentally, he has elected considerable work in the Department of Oratory. He will devote his talents to the development of new and better varieties of fruit. We shall all expect some. When you look at some of the newspaper articles, you'll see how he, well documented. Every little success he had at Greenwich High was documented. If he won contests in orations, if he won contests in performances, it was recorded. However, him and his father just didn't show up in a vacuum to Greenwich. We need to talk about the precursor AME Church in Henley. And that church was founded by my ancestors. It came out of the first United Methodist Church in Stamford, which merged into the Stanwich Church in that section of Greenwich. And what you see here is, in my Hang Root blog post, I mentioned how my ancestors, as soon as Deacon Jonas Mead was instrumental in opening up Lot 23 of Second Congregational Church, my ancestors in the 1840s were members of that church. One of the things that we see, and I'll show you after this, is that there are maybe a decade before Little Bethel is formed, you see the emergence of the colored mission that's based out of Stanwich Church. So 1872, you have the colored mission in formation. I will show you a record after I speak that in 1865, my second great aunt, Sarah Jane Green, married Marcus Lucius Smith. His ancestors go back to New Canaan and Connecticut, and we believe one of them was a Revolutionary War patriot. That's in 1865. She gets married to Lucius. By 1871, she's a member of the church. By 1872, as soon as my second great uncle, Thomas Green, marries Emily Peterson, her family, mother and father, were members of the colored mission. In 1874, what you see is the growth of this AME church in Hang Root, specifically at the home of my third great grandfather, Alan Green, who became a deacon there. You see the emergence of what I called Old Black Greenwich. Those are the folks who were born and raised in Greenwich, lived there prior to the Civil War. However, right after the Civil War, you have the great migration of African Americans from Staunton, Virginia. So the church is growing with both of them. And by 1875, Thomas is given his first sermon. Let me show you some documents. One thing that was interesting to me is when I went back and looked at the early members of Stanwich Church, there was a note that in 1857, the church refused to let Frederick Douglass deliver 3 anti-slavery lectures at the house. So one of the things that is interesting is this what started the split with the formation of this precursor to Little Bethel? You know, we do know that there was segregation in churches. Let me just say, a great book just came out, Spaces of Enslavement, A History of Slavery and Resistance in Dutch New York, which talks about how the churches were segregated spatially. The same thing happened in British churches and other white churches, you always saw African Americans segregated, way up in the balcony or way in the back. And at some point, people decided enough is enough. Let's form our own churches. And that's what you see. Here is a document that was put together by Jeffrey Bingham-Edits at the Greenwich Historical Society. And one of the things that pops up, Robert Peterson, whose mother Emily and her husband were some of the original members of the Colored Mission. His sister is the one who married my second great uncle, Thomas Green. But one of the things it says is, according to the First United Methodist Church records, Robert's mother, Emily, is listed as a member in full connection, Colored Mission. She was baptized August 1872, her and her husband. And if we go back, let me see if I can go back, you will see that, you have Nancy Falmetta, George Peck, Sally Ann Watson, who was the wife of Horace Watson. These are all Black Greenwich names. And then you see how you have other folks, a Rhoda with no last name. You have Nancy and George Peck, Huldah Peck. You have all these people who were members of the Stanwich Church forming the Colored Mission. This is a document that was in the Portchester Journal, October 30th, 1873. Thomas Green will deliver his first lecture for the season at the ME Church, King Street. Tuesday evening, November 4th, 1873. Subject, imagination. Doors open at 7 p.m. And as you can see, they were charging 50 cents to be paid at the door. So one of the things in researching enslaved ancestors is our stories are out there. You just have to dig deep. Notice I'm looking at newspaper articles that don't necessarily, that are telling the truth, but you don't really see that. This particular newspaper was from, it's Alan Green, it's 1875. And what it's saying is, and I found this interesting, that the colored people connected with the so-called Stanwich Chapel had a donation party. So they're raising money for their church. In the evening of the 27th, the proceeds amounted between $60 and $70 will be need in maintaining Sunday services. The chapel is located about half a mile above Mr. Cephas Palmer's, where Mr. Thomas Green preaches Sunday afternoons. In the summer, and this is important, they have a quote unquote bush or open air meetings in the evening. Mr. Green preaches in Hang Root at the house of his father, Mr. Alan Green. And of course, that's the Green Twachtman House on Round Hill Road, ground zero of Hang Root today. These meetings are said to be result in great good to the people they are intended to benefit. So this is 1875. One of the things that you see prior to the decades is, when you think about it, during slavery, free Blacks were just one step below enslaved people. There were all sorts of Black codes that prohibited the amount of people meeting together, congregating together. Passes were required. So prior to these decades, people probably met in the bush after they finished all the works, out of the, away from the gaze of white folks, to preach and to celebrate and to commune. So that's something to think about. Here's another article about the donation party. This is in the Portchester Journal, October 20th, 1874. And looking through this article, you see the names of Deacon Alan Green, Charles Merritt, Joseph Purdy, Horace Watson, Old Black Greenwich. You have Jack Merritt, Henry Ferris. These are old names, and they talk about how they keep raising money in support of all sorts of aids that they're doing in the building of the church. And this brings me to Little Bethel AME Church. that is Little Bethel. You can't see the small photo. Don't worry, I have attached in the PDF resources the actual book, and we'll look at the book afterwards. One of the things about this book is it has its own history about the formation of Little Bethel. And it's as if 1882 Little Bethel is founded, and prior to that time, all the Black folks were at all white churches, and that's not correct. So that's why I'm writing my ancestors back into the story, because there was a precursor to the Little Bethel AME Church that came out of the Stanwich Church, the color mission. You can't talk about the AME without talking about the founder of the AME Church, which is Bishop Richard Allen. The church was founded in 1778. It is an abolitionist church. Both the AME Church and the AME Zion Church, which comes out of New York City, are abolitionist churches. What does that mean? They had a mission to spread the gospel, and they sent missionaries across the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic states in the early 1800s. And as the United States expands south, Midwest, and west, so does the AME Church, and eventually goes and takes part in foreign missions. The AME Church is affiliated with Wilberforce University. And this church, the founding of the church is, when you start looking at it, deals with creating churches, mutual aid societies. You have temperance groups. You have businesses being formed. Everything is being kept because you have segregation within the Black community. But founding of churches and providing safe havens for self-emancipated people was also key. This is the book, and we're going to get to this afterwards. Here is from the same book, Reverend William Henry Shields. He's the father of Norwood. He was from Philadelphia. In the book, it talks about how he erected the parsonage back during his 3 to 4 years there, 1894 to, I believe, 1898. Okay, now let's talk about that abolitionist life. So here is Norwood. He was born in Burlington, New Jersey. There's some debate in all the records as to what year. His World War II draft record says 1879. Other census records go up to 1802. So it's within that time span. I would like to think he knew when he was born. So 1879 is, what we say, because he filled out that draft card. And he was 63 years old at the time. And if you look at the writing, it looks like he was 63. He graduated from Greenwich High School in 1898. Between 1900 and 1904, he earned his BS in agriculture from Cornell University and an MS in agriculture from Ohio State. He then taught, and his life record is very, very similar to other, I want to say, privileged folks who were part of the AME. They were part of W.E.B. Du Bois's Talented Tenth. And his life cycle is very similar to my fifth cousin, Reverend Charles C. Thompson out of Newark, who actually went to Oberlin at the behest of Reverend Simeon Jocelyn, one of the original lawyers from the Amistad case in New Haven. And he after Reconstruction, he went south and he taught at numerous schools, just like Norwood. So he taught at St. Paul Polytech Institute in Lawrence, Virginia, where he met his wife. He went to Oklahoma to Langston University and that was part of Indian Territory. His wife's mother was half Cherokee, He then came back and went to Bordentown, was teaching at Bordentown, New Jersey Training School. Most of his jobs involved being a farm manager, a director of agriculture. And in the late 20s, he goes to Central State University, which becomes Wilberforce. And continuing his life, he was there for 33 years at Wilberforce. He retired, and then he came out of retirement at the age of 76 in 1954 to become associate professor of agriculture at Delaware State University, where he was specifically brought in by the president of the college to build their agriculture department. He was there a year, ended up having a heart attack, and passed away in September of 1855. He was buried at Union AME Church in Philadelphia. His funeral was at Union AME Church in Philadelphia, and he was buried in, I'm sorry, it shouldn't say Odd Fellows, it should say Odd Fellows. So the fact that he was buried in a cemetery that was Odd Fellows leads me to believe there's some sort of Masonic or Masonic-like connection that he had. You will see among abolitionists, especially with AME, if they have any sort of Masonic leanings, you'll see either they're buried with Masonic, full Masonic honors, or they're listed as being a member of the Odd Fellows. So that is a trajectory that needs further research, but I am sure he has some sort of connection with the Masons or the Odd Fellows, and they were very much instrumental in the Underground Railroad. Family matters most. He married Ella Levette in Indian Territory, Oklahoma. She was part Cherokee on her maternal side. They had six children: Mildred, Anna, Vernon, Paul Francis, Ella, and Mark. Their son Mark died at the age of 21. He was a Wilberforce graduate, and he died in the Korean War. When Norwood died, he was survived by his 5 children, 9 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchildren. And of course, there are many descendants since that time. Now, one of the things I found interesting was his granddaughter. And in telling her story now, what you see with this talented 10th families is that their successes carried down. And I found this website where it discussed her life. So she was born Sunday, June Toombs in 1944 in Philadelphia to Mildred Laureen Shields, and her dad was Sidney James Toomer Sr. She spent summers with both her maternal and paternal grandparents in Oklahoma at Wilberforce. What I found fascinating was that she was a freedom rider in 1963. She was assaulted while integrating lunch counters in Alabama. She marched with Martin Luther King and attended the March on Washington in 1863. In 1965, she earned a BA from Temple University. In 1979, she earned her master's in education and her MD degree from the University of Maryland. She was among the oldest students at the time. She married Hugh Pickens in 1984. He was from Ponca City, Oklahoma, and they lived for 20 years in Baltimore. She had an accomplished career in the psychiatry, mental health field. For like 20 or 30 years, she was at VP level, managing the psychiatry departments in the Baltimore City jails. Very accomplished. She retired to Ponca City, Oklahoma in 2005, where she became a collector of Native American jewelry and artwork. She loved collecting turquoise. She died October 21st, 17, and she survived only by her step grandchildren, her grandchildren, a host of niece and nephews. Her parents and her brother were predeceased. But one of the things she says is that there were rules of the Shields in the Shields family. And I'm going to read this because I think it's wonderful. Dr. Pickens was proud of her family. In 1900, her grandfather, Norwood Shields, who she loved dearly, was one of the first Black men to graduate with an advanced degree from Cornell University. His first job was in Indian Territory, later Oklahoma, at Langston College, where Dr. Pickens' mother, Mildred, was born in 1907. Her grandfather later moved from Langston to Wilberforce, Ohio, where he was a professor of agriculture at Central State College. Dr. Pickens and her beloved older brother, Sidney, loved to spend summers with their grandparents in Wilberforce, Ohio, where they were taught the 3 cardinal rules of the Shields family. And I love this. Rule number 1, accept whatever comes your way without complaint. Rule number 2, always exceed everyone's expectations, including your own. Rule number 3, play the hand you are dealt and play the hell out of it. I think that's awesome. Those are good rules to live by for anyone, but it gets back to the notion that my mother, grandmother, grandfather had growing up, where it was expected to, if you succeed as a person of color, you had to be better than anyone else. And you see that. But one of the things that I loved was she tells this story that when she went to Alabama, her dad sat her down. And I'm going to end on this note because it's just a beautiful note. I hope I don't tear up. He told her to memorize this poem that was written in 1875. And I'm sure his father passed this poem down, and it was written by William Ernest Henley. And it states, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeoning of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade. And I would say that goes back to lynching. And yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Now, amen belongs right there. Talk about resistance and having the growing up in such a religious household where faith was everything. And Reverend Felix he can talk about this, where you're raised knowing and in living in Black excellence, that you know you're educated, you know what you have to do, and you're ready to stand on the front line in 1963, also in earlier periods, and speak truth to power. And it says something about having that kind of faith to move forward despite being the history upon our backs where, you know, it's heavy sometime, but yet you keep plugging and plugging because you know, we built this. You know, that's the history that gets erased. And that's the kind of history that descendants of enslaved people and formerly enslaved people need to bring to the forefront. I can't repeat over and over again. In the middle of I have so much information, primary documents for the book I'm writing, where our stories are out there, but literally you have to read between the lines and tease out what is going on. Norwood and his father didn't just pop in to Greenwich. They came because there was that link that went from Philly to Newark to Greenwich. And when you look at, and I'll show it in a couple of minutes, this book, and it lists some of the surnames. Well, our Laura, my second great aunt, Laura Green, married her cousin, but her second husband was a Van Dyke. Where were they from? Newark. So she left after her husband died and ended up back in Newark, where she married a Van Dyke. And you're seeing how these folks are moving from hub to hub to hub, all up and down the Hudson River, and then going further north. And you see that starting in the late 1700s, moving forward until you actually have the formation of the AME Church in 1882. But things didn't start with that. There was a history. So on that note, I'm going to end. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to go into the Q&A. So if you have any questions, well, before I stop sharing, Rick, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yep, I'm here.
One of the things, I'm going to escape and then stop sharing this screen and share another screen. Let me see if I can do this. I want to show this picture. Sorry for the typos, everybody. I have Dupuytren's contracture, so be easy on me. I have a typo here. I didn't include this picture. It's from my cousin, Dennis Richmond Jr., who I'm sure you're all aware of. Please say a prayer for him. He's battling COVID. This is a picture of his third great grandmother. This is Mary Elizabeth Roselle Glover, and she's the person who donated the funds for the stained glass window in the Little Bethel. And this was taken circa after her husband died, circa 1900. So if you're familiar with dress, this is a mourning dress. And this is his uncle, John Sherman Merritt's mother, by the way. Let me stop here and share something else with you. Okay. Just figure out why this isn't, okay. It's not wanting to share. Hold on. Let me see if I can do this. Can everyone see that?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, let me try again. It says only hosts can share. I'm wondering if that's.
I say
Okay,
for all panelists, I can update too. Who can start sharing
Okay,
when someone
so
else
let me,
Go ahead.
still not allowing me to share, so I don't know why. Let me see if I can do it this way. All right, let's try this again. Get out of here.
Take your time. I know it can be unusual.
Yeah, it's doing some weird stuff.
We had you share the last two documents came up okay.
Yeah, so
Sometimes it's
don't worry.
share.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back on here.
Okay.
I think I might have done something. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what it did.
Could try to come back and revisit it. I do have those other newspaper.
Yeah, I'm
articles
trying to
discuss.
escape out of it, but I don't even see where the I'm on the Zoom, and I'm not seeing where any of the chat
Oh, maybe
boxes.
sometimes move the mouse and the menu options come at the bottom.
Okay, there is. Okay,
Yeah.
let me share screen. Okay, here we go. So I wanted to show you. It's another fun fact that I'm going to show you. I wanted to show you the distinguished graduates of Wilberforce. It's a who's who. You have Leontine Price, you have W.E.B. Du Bois, you have Brigadier General Benjamin O. Davis, of course, Tuskegee Airmen. You have U.S. Representative Floyd Flake. You had sociologist Dr. William Julius Wilson. You have so many, Dr. Yvonne Walker Taylor, first female professor, Wilberforce University. You have so many people who were graduates of Wilberforce. Now, I want to show you something else. Okay, let's see if it goes. Okay. Can everybody see this book?
Yep.
All right. So let me scroll ahead. I'm just going to point things out. Joseph S. Glover, he's off of Dennis's line. He was a house cleaner established in Greenwich. What you see here are pictures of members of different. So the origin of the AME Church, you will be able to read about Richard Allen here. Here, First Negro Church in Greenwich. This is what I take. That first paragraph I take umbrage with, because it's basically saying that the people of color were only affiliated with white churches, and that's not true. Now, when you look down at the original members, when you see Green, Banks, Van Dyke, you see Merritts, of course.
Yeah, very familiar names for Greenwich.
Those are my relatives, but you also see the Bush family of the Bush Holly House. You see the Belcher. Those are all Black Greenwich names, and I've written about them in my blog post, Hang Root. So you have to see the connection between the Stanwich Church, same actors, and the Little Bethel, same actors. So now you know that that first paragraph isn't true, because it's the same family members actively involved. They just physically were able to build a church. You will see pastors. You'll see that William Shields was the 10th pastor, and he spent like 3 years there. One of the things I wanted to show you, and I was, let me see. These are the two pictures that I had in my presentation. I'm looking for, let me see if I didn't pass it. I might have passed it. If you look at the current membership roll at the time, this is what I mean, where you had the great migration of folks coming up, specifically from Staunton, Virginia. At the time in Greenwich, you had Greenwich becoming gentrified. You had a lot of rich folks, and they were looking for house domestics. So that's what you see. What I'm looking for, and I might have passed it, is I was explaining to Rick, Madam C.J. Walker. If you see in this lower right side, you see one of our ancestors, Madam Louise Merritt, hair culturist, and she was part of Madam C.J. Walker's hair system. And if you don't know Madam C.J. Walker, she was the first Black woman millionaire. She lived in Westchester, Irvington. She's buried in Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx, very famous cemetery. And a great movie came out last year based on her granddaughter's book called Self-Made. And if you haven't watched it, it's on Netflix. Watch it. It'll tell you the story. She was actively involved in the formation of the NAACP. Yeah, so here you have one of our ancestors who was part of that Black business entrepreneurship that you see within the abolitionist church. So I put this as a link. Little Bethel current members, this is your history. Save it. And of course, you can read about all the other businesses in Greenwich, both black and white, who were celebrating the anniversary of the church. So
You put
with
this
that,
link,
I'm gonna,
and you put this
Mhm.
link in the resources that
it's,
we
yeah,
sent. That's great. And can you
yep,
talk a
it's
little bit
in,
about how you located it from the, it looks like the link is from the Connecticut State
yeah,
Library.
I put the link in there. So it's, you'll get the link in the document, the PDF.
That's wonderful. And
Okay, I'm
tell
gonna
us how,
stop sharing and
right.
I'm gonna go to, if I can get it, some of the, I got questions in the chat. Let me see what's in the chat
Yeah, and the
first.
Q&A. You go
Um,
ahead.
were there documents from Janine? Were there documents? There are no documents. I shouldn't say that. Rick is gonna show you an article that was written when Norwood came back to see his mother, where he's comparing the North to the South. But we don't have that information. At least it hasn't been found yet.
And Teresa, I've got on the screen a couple articles I found from the Greenwich Time.
Yeah.
And we'll just show some of the text may be challenging to read because
Okay.
this is from 1897, June 26th, talking about a chorus at the high school. And the second to last line lists Norwood Shields as a member of the high school chorus. And you can see the classmates that are with him, male and female there, and would also help paint a picture of what it was like and what the class size was like, what extracurricular activities were, and the things that he was involved in to help get a better idea of what it was like. And this was documented in the newspaper. And let me just show a couple other articles. And Teresa, feel free to comment.
Yeah,
on
I can't
any.
wait for you to get the one where he's visiting his mother. This one, no, this is a different one. But this is an example of what I said. His life was well documented.
Yeah.
Every little thing you'll find in Greenwich, especially in the local papers or the black papers. If you're privileged and people knew you, every little thing you did was documented. I mean, I found articles, oh, he's off to visit his mother in Greenwich. Oh, he's off to visit relatives in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And it's just all the social interactions you see.
Very nice. And this one's talking about prize for speaking, and being held in the auditorium. The room beautifully decorated with many flags and palms. Pretty scene, as they say. 400 in attendance. Can you imagine speaking in front of such a group? High school chorus. So they was also there. So they had quite a performance to put on and a nice program altogether. And they talk about young ladies who captured the prize. First prize, Molly Marshall, who recited, I can't quite make it out, Ruglises. Let's keep going. And as we get down this article, boys' prizes were equally divided. Franklin and a Herald who won, talking about Shakespeare.
There it is, those who entered the contest.
Yep, and who did credibly with their rendition. I can't quite make out the word.
Recantations.
Recantations, very good, thank you. And Norwood Shields is mentioned in the second to last line of that bottom paragraph there. Let's just see, I think he's mentioned again.
Recitation.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. On the part of the young men, Norwood Shields, who opened the program with a long and difficult recantation, made a good impression. Look at that, getting mentioned.
Recitation, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Let's check out the next.
Every time I see this, I can't help but to think of Dennis in oration.
And here, following boys and girls of the Greenwich High School have been elected to appear at the prize speaking contest to take place during the first week in April. And this is 1898. Norwood Shields is mentioned. First commencement, the auditorium filled at the graduating exercises last night. And we have a list of graduates. Essays from graduates were read. Singing was splendid, as they say here. And then the graduates were, starting with Charles Henry, Dayton. Let's see, I believe Norwood, and yeah, in the second line, last name in the second line, Norwood Shields is mentioned. Let's see if I can.
And do you have the one on his views of the North? Yeah, that's the one.
There we go. Let's see if I can zoom in a little more. For
No,
everyone.
that's the other one. I think it was the first in that group that you sent me on the his impressions of the North. Here you go, that one.
Oh, Impressions of the North. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, this is
Janine had a
19
question, but it's
Oh, go ahead.
interesting.
Yeah, just to briefly summarize some of it. This is a 1909 article in December from the Greenwich Time. Just discussing the impression and the treatment of people in different parts of the country. And as it starts, there are those even beyond the colored residents in Greenwich who will recall Norwood Shields. His father was the minister of Little Bethel Church, and his mother still lives here. Mr. Shields graduated from the high school in its first class in 1898, and in due course graduating from Cornell. 3 years in Oklahoma is mentioned, stating that he's beginning to travel around the country quite a bit.
He was director of agriculture in St. Paul's Normal Industrial School, that's in Virginia. And what I found interesting about this article, it says there are 1,700 acres included in the farm connected with the school, which has some 400 students. Mr. Shields is a forceful young man, is thoroughly imbued with the importance of his work, and is intelligently enthusiastic, respecting it, is given results that serve to upbuild a name for him, and in every way is a credit to his race, for the uplifting of which he is in line to do, and is already doing so much. Old acquaintances will be glad to hear of his continued advancement. It is his purpose to have his mother accompany and live south with him on his return. And then it goes, and then it gives his view of the South. Speaking of the colored people, Mr. Shields, from his own experience, says that their treatment in the North is decidedly better and more considerate than elsewhere, and it is a mistake to concede this to the South. If the colored man makes good, he says, in the North, he gets the credit for it and advances and prospers. In no section does the colored man receive anywhere near the consideration the North affords him. So it's interesting to see his viewpoint there. I noticed, Rick, that some of the questions have to do with the current Little Bethel, and I know we have Reverend Felix Delator. I wonder if we can unmute him.
Yeah, let me see if
Is there any way? I hope he doesn't mind that I just put him on the spot.
Mr. Delator, is that what you said? Or who?
Yeah,
Okay,
Reverend Felix.
let's see if I can.
Because he can actually bring us up to date with what's going on.
So there is a request.
Hello, Reverend Felix. Are you unmute yourself?
If he can, locate on the screen a spot to unmute.
Ask to unmute. Okay.
Yep, I sent him a note.
Hello, this is Reverend Delator. And
hello, Reverend Felix. It's so good. I'm so good that you're here.
All right. It's hard.
I hear an echo. If you want to turn down one of your computers or one of your.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello.
I still hear you well, but there's just a little bit of an echo.
That's better.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right.
I don't think it'll work at the moment with the audio.
I just wanted to say this is very inspiring. Thank you.
So nice to hear.
I wonder if we remove one of these, will it be clear?
Here, I'll give it a shot here.
Let me try to remove one of them and then we can hear him.
Hey, hello. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Reverend Felix, can you hear me?
Hello.
Oh, I can, perfect, perfect, I hope.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could give us an update on Little Bethel. We know that the congregation is, the actual physical building is closed in Greenwich, but if you can update us on what's going on, that would be great, because I know you're always in Greenwich, so the presence is still there.
Hello. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we hear you well.
Okay, very good. Number one, I am, hard of hearing, and it's hard for me to understand things, but nevertheless, from what I saw from your presentation, when you printed the things out, it's very inspiring. And I was trying to get some of my members to come now. My sister is also a member. She's over in Chicago. She would on another Zoom, so she wanted to know if it was recorded. But nevertheless, I want to thank you for the work that you do. Very inspiring. I like to say, where you find all these things, and where you find all these things. I like to compile it and keep it at the church. But keep doing your work, and we will meet each other soon. God bless you.
Yeah, Reverend Felix, where is the church located now?
Where's the church at? It's at the same place, 44 Lake Avenue.
So it's back open again? Or are you out of
well,
this
we are
Stamford church?
okay. We have been closed. We're not. We're only open for Zoom services. We have not reopened the building. We tried once, but we closed it back up. But after we do the thing we have to do to clean, and then we will reopen. I will send you information about our Zoom service, but we are still there.
Stay strong, my brother. Well, I appreciate that you were here. We are recording it, so you'll be able to share it. And
Okay.
I always make sure I provide more reference information than necessary. The time period that we're discussing, again, is the Reconstruction era. On the PDF handout, I have several books on Reconstruction. Most notably, W.E.B. Du Bois' book on Reconstruction, John Hope Franklin, even Skip Gates wrote a book on Stony Road and describes that period because it was a period of so much hope and that we could move forward. And then you slip into Jim Crow. So it is within that context that Little Bethel was, formed, but they didn't come out of nowhere. There's a history in Greenwich that we're uncovering each and every day. Hang Root was a mecca for self-emancipating people, like my third great grandmother. Also William Grimes popped through on his way to Hartford. You did have the issue of kidnapping happen, and we know what happened with Peter John Lee walking over the Byron Bridge. So there's a history that we are uncovering slowly, but it's out there, and it means that we have to dig through the archives. One of the things that I did not mention that's very important when talking about free people of color, and I believe Janine knows that in the springtime, I'll be discussing certain caveats in doing colonial African and Native American research, is that enslaved people were only one step above. Formerly enslaved people were one step above enslaved people. So if you are doing research and you're not finding people, let's say in Greenwich proper, then you need to start looking at other places in Connecticut, could be Vermont, all over Westchester, into New Jersey, into New York City, because people had to go to work, find work, or they would be a ward of the town. And that's not something that, people wanted to see. So you have the separation of families, everything. But within that, there is always the formation of the church. When I look at my cousin Jones, our Hetty relatives, Lazarus Hetty Jr. Formed an AME church in Yorktown. His father, Lazarus Sr., worked for the Benjamin Lion of White Plains. These people, they were mobile in the post-revolutionary period up until the Civil War, and people moved. And so we need to go back to the archives wherever they are, attack newspaper articles. One of the things of finding stories is I included a link to the new index of Freeman Bureau records. You can look at those Freeman records and they're a treasure trove. And now they've been indexed. So there are little few glitches, but there are a lot of history that are there when you look at the pension records, for example, of people who fought in the Civil War immediately after, and they tell the story. So I just encourage people to keep looking, keep digging.
And Teresa, I
That's
think
it.
we went through the chat side. Have you looked at the Q&A and seen some of the questions in there?
I'm looking now. I see we answered Joan's question. My cousin, Catherine, can you verify? Yeah, Wilberforce was many historically Black. Yeah, HBCUs that the AME churches, yeah, they were part and parcel.
Wow.
His life cycle is so similar to other abolitionists. And the fact that his father was in Greenwich, and there's his father's story that we need to look into, because he was in, come on, Burlington, New Jersey was a stop on the Underground Railroad, so close to Philadelphia. So there's more history to be found in his family. The fact that his granddaughter's mother was Half Creek, was she a Cherokee freedman? So there's more to this story that we have to keep digging that's out there. I don't have time to do it all in all. I hope one day that I'm working with a bunch of students who can, like I can clone to look at all these places, because I know it's out there. It's just having the time to go look for it. But there's more to his story. So let's just say this is continuing. And that's it. I'm going to end on that note.
Great.
Joan, you said, does the Little Bethel AME Church have archives that are helpful to your research? I'm still looking for the records from Stanwich Church, because there might be something there. And from what I hear, the Stanwich Church archives for the Colored Mission, they're all over the place. So I know that Little Bethel doesn't have them, that I know, but there's still hope with the Stanwich Church to find out what was going on. So I hope I answered that question.
I loved your message about Black excellence and the history of Black excellence, from forming own churches, searching for higher education, universities. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the challenges of generally finding documents for this research.
Well, you know, it's difficult, but as you know, Rick, we have ProQuest.
Yeah.
You have, thank God, a lot of the early Black press was based in New York State. So Fulton History, their .org, their newspaper archives are free, and you can find a lot of information that doesn't just, because the Black press was located in New York, they carried information throughout the country. So that's one way. Newspaper archives in general, there are so many. Your public library should have access to some. I'm here in Manhattan. The Schomburg is a wealth of information. I encourage you to go to local historical societies, go to the courthouses. One of the things, if you're interested in doing African-American genealogy, I can't stress two organizations, Maggie, and I have that link, and the Midwestern African-American Genealogy Institute. They routinely have a conference where they bring in the best and the brightest across the board. You have Judy Russell from the legal genealogist, to Nika Smith, to Shelley Murphy, all these people who have Angela Raji. You know, there are so many folks who have done the research going way back to Africa, some of them, and making the links. Then you have, if you go to whoisnikasmith.com, she has a thing for buy, and it says become a patron. There are different levels. The highest levels, $20 a month, and you get so much information. She's backed away from Black Progen. Of course, our videos, we have over 100 videos on YouTube, Black Progen, that are state specific, topic specific, that you can access anytime. So, and there are so many more now that things have become digitized. There's so many digital archives you can access as well. But some of the stuff isn't always found online, so you're going to have to get up and go there. So there's no substitute. You have to make the time. I'm sure if I went to Wilberforce, I'd find a whole lot more. When I was researching my Reverend Charles H. Thompson, who went to Oberlin, he left and went to Alcorn State, taught at Dillard, taught in Cleveland. He was all over the place, but his archives ended up at the Amistad Center at Dillard University in New Orleans. And I actually was able to contact them years ago, and I found a treasure trove. He has one letter where he's writing to Simeon Jocelyn, talking about the fact that he's leaving Oberlin, crossing into Kentucky, going way out in the bush and preaching. And, you know, there are some white racists who are throwing rocks into the window, trying to disrupt the service. There's always a need for more money because you're dealing with people who are destitute just a couple of years after the Civil War. And, you know, he ends up traveling, and it's such a similar life cycle to this. They were abolitionists, born and bred to the end, and you see how they pass down their values. So I don't know about you. I find power in that poem Invictus, because there's strength there in knowing that you have the faith to make it through. And I'm so happy to end on that note. And that's it for me. I think I answered everybody's question.
Yeah,
Hope so.
Thank you so much, Teresa. And thank you to our great audience for joining us. Teresa, it was just such a great presentation. We appreciate your research, and it's especially helpful while so many of us are using computers from home more and more often. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Take care.